David Cunliffe's 6-page ghost budget speech only mentioned agriculture twice. On the first occasion, he said Labour would show more support for those at the forefront of agricultural R&D. And the second, raising far more questions than it answers. Under Labour, said Cunliffe, indiscriminate sales of farmland of more than just 5 hectares will be prevented. Just what indiscriminate sales practically means, or just who this rule would apply to, was not stated. But the implication is that if Labour is in power and doesn't like you, you won't be able to buy even half a lifestyle block of land.
As Labour's Rural Affairs, Biosecurity and Agriculture spokesman, straight shooter Damien O'Connor is well qualified to talk on the issues that affect rural New Zealand.
Well, we have to finalise the wording, but we've said that we will make it more difficult for foreigners to come in and buy particularly large tracts of land and tracts that might be strategically placed. And so while we've, I guess, enjoyed some very good foreign investment, we're reaching the point now where it's starting to put real pressure on New Zealand farmers. They're unable to get the capital to buy the land, and so that land is, slipping slowly away from New Zealand ownership, and that's not necessarily a good long-term thing.
So one of the issues that's been on everyone's lips lately has been the price of milk in New Zealand and whether Fonterra is providing a fair price to Kiwis. What's your thoughts on that, Mr. O'Connor?
So a Commerce Commission inquiry, in my view, would be a good thing. It would clear the air and it would allow farmers to explain their situation, people to know that they don't get all the money, and then the supermarkets and the wholesalers, Fonterra as well, would have to front up and explain the margins that they currently get. And given the restricted access to milk through Fonterra's supply effectively, we need to know that there is a fair market so that domestic consumers are getting the best price, but that we're still in a position to maximise the value from it offshore.
O'Connor also raised concerns about the seemingly endless dairy farm conversion trend in the country and the downstream environmental implications of this. His view is that New Zealand agriculture needs to retain its diversity in order to continue succeeding. With commodities at record highs, it's hard for O'Connor to get too much mud to stick on the government on agricultural issues. O'Connor says that in New Zealand politics, agriculture is approached in a spirit of non-partisan cooperation to ensure farmers' returns aren't affected. But in the same breath, identifies one area where he thinks the government is particularly weak and needs to roll up its sleeves and do some hard work.
On the other hand, it needs leadership, and I think we've seen a lack of that in some crucial areas. And I think that we've still got some major issues to deal with around structure. We've got pit fruit industry really wallowing at the moment. They're not quite sure what returns they'll get from the market. 100 or so exporters all competing with one another in a year that they've got some outstanding apples and apple crops. So that's one example, along with meat, along with wool, where some leadership is needed from central government to take the industry forward.
While many people point to the efficiencies of raw market power, Damien O'Connor says some of New Zealand agriculture's biggest success stories, the Dairy Board, Zespri and Fonterra, have come from direct government intervention.